We're on your side tonight now with something some parents noticed when their children were learning from home. Their kids were struggling with some of the basics of reading. It's estimated 15 to 20% of the population has a language-based learning disability. One of the most common is dyslexia. It's estimated 1 in 10 live with that disorder. Someone with it might see letters as backwards or upside down. The text may appear to jump on the page. They might not be able to tell the difference between letters that look similar, like an O, an E, and a C. Now, those are just some of the symptoms. There are others, and it's important to note it's not a vision problem. It's a processing problem, and it is vexing to a kid.
And so that can cause frustration, that can cause lack of self-esteem, that can cause a variety of things.
Parent Hedgepeth knows of what she speaks. She lives with dyslexia. She struggled as a kid to find a learning environment that worked for her.
So once you get to a place that understands you and speaks your language and understands how your brain works, there's almost a relief that happens.
I was going to ask about that. Even as a little kid, you felt that sense of relief, sort of some stress coming away?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What was that like for you?
Well, it just kind of made you feel that you weren't, that something wasn't necessarily wrong with you, or that something wasn't broken. You just learned differently. You just experienced differently. I've said more than once, and I teach this to my son all the time, that we're all originals. And so we're not all one size fits all.
Now, her son does fit into this story as well. More on that in a moment. But first, the place she found was the Fletcher School in Charlotte. It's a private K-12 school that is designed for those with specific learning disabilities like dyslexia. Dr. Tara Terry is Fletcher's head of school. One thing you notice right away, there aren't very many desks in this classroom, right? That's by design, right?
That is by design. So when we opened our building, in 1982, we opened with 6 students. And we've kept that same student-to-teacher ratio for the last 40 years.
Why is that so important?
It's really important because our teachers need to know the learning and the learning styles of each student in the class. So what you'll see is 6 students in a class, except for when we do our intensive remediation of reading, and then we do that in small groups of 2 or 3, so that we can make sure the students are learning carefully.
Does each student have his or her own plan then that they're working from?
Each student has their own plan that the teachers help develop along with the parents and their colleague support. And then we make sure that the way that we're teaching the students is very sequential and very structured. So everything is mastery based so that we don't move on to the next skill till they've mastered the one before.
So you've seen an uptick. During the pandemic, people were noticing, parents were noticing, and you've seen more inquiries about the school?
We've had about a 60% increase in inquiries and a 10% increase in enrollment since the pandemic. Yes and no. I think it speaks to the fact that 1 in 5 students can be diagnosed with dyslexia, and that tells me we're missing a lot of them. And with parents right next to their children at home, they were able to see those early warning signs and get them that early intervention. That's really important.
What do we know about dyslexia now that maybe we didn't know 10, 20 years ago?
I think what we're beginning to help the general public understand is early intervention is best. Starting when they're 5 and 6 years old, when you see those warning signs, you can start the remediation process. And when you are diagnosed with dyslexia, it often means you've had to problem solve in different ways.
Because do people still confuse it with that there's something wrong with the child, they can't learn?
Absolutely, they confuse it with motivation, they confuse it with intelligence, they confuse it with you just need to try harder. This is sort of telling someone who wears glasses, if you just squint harder, you'll see better.
Is it hard to diagnose really early then? Because do they have to have a basic sort of building block of learning to be able to understand that it's a problem?
So at the Fletcher School, what we do is, beginning in 2nd grade, you need an official diagnosis to come to school here. But kindergarten and 1st grade, we're really looking for those early warning signs. Trouble rhyming, trouble learning the alphabet, trouble recognizing their name. Is there a family history? Struggling with reading and writing. And for those students, we know that early intervention is best. So we think if we get them in early, we can help them before they need that official diagnosis.
You heard Dr. Terry mention family history. There does appear to be a genetic component to dyslexia. If a parent has it, there's a roughly 50% chance that the child will as well. And that brings us back to parent Hedgepeth. Her son started in public school here in Charlotte, but she began noticing some of the same struggles that she dealt with. And she brought him to Fletcher as a 1st grader. What kind of progress have you seen in your son in the time he's been here?
It's amazing. You know, you had a child that would go to school that was sad and crying, and homework was a nightmare. There was lots of tears, and now it's completely different.
It's almost like a different personality comes out of him, I imagine, right?
Oh, absolutely. His confidence is back. He's excited. He always wants to come to school. It's just, we've seen it in so many different aspects.
Including his end of 5th grade testing, hit it out of the park. It's proof success can be found and that early diagnosis helps. So if you're worried about your child, trust your gut on this. Seek out some answers. Now, as mentioned, Fletcher School's private. Elementary tuition, $27,600 a year. The school does offer some tuition assistance, and it does accept opportunity scholarships. Those are those state vouchers you can use at private schools.